So my approach is always, if you're going to be serious about this, like any profession, then you need to treat it that way. Like if you're going to become a lawyer, you don't just start practicing law, or a surgeon. You need to start from the bottom and learn the trade. Ask any trader that's struggling. They'll say, "I'm not doing what I know I need to do." And it's almost like self-sabotage, right? It's like it's never worked, but they just can't help themselves, right? Because they want to be able to tell someone, "Oh, I was on Bitcoin when it was going up," right? Meanwhile, they buy it right at the top and it tanks. So really being honest with yourself, and again, this comes down to the psychological thing of evaluating, tracking your trades, journaling why you're doing what you're doing, and then finding out where your real mistakes are and why they're happening, and then working on yourself to address those. Everyone struggles with taking a loss. They need to be right. Like, and again, these are all psychological issues, right? Like you need to be right. You can't even think of taking a loss, right? So then people are holding all these dogs in their portfolio and their trading account that they refuse to sell. Trading is a mathematical game, right? It's like, what's your percent of wins, what's your percent of losses, how much you average win, average loss, probability of, these things. And if you really understand the mathematics of it as an example, then you realize fairly quickly that, yes, not taking early losses, you're never going to be successful, right?
Hello, and welcome to the Trader's Journey for Investors Underground. In this episode, it's an honor to be joined by Peter Robbins, a trader and author with over 40 years of experience in the markets. He's lived through plenty of market cycles and life events, and he's distilled so much of that into his new book, The Trader's Journey, Navigating the Path to Trading Success. In this episode, we'll discuss Peter's own trading journey and some of the key concepts and themes that he discusses in his book so that you could use it as sort of a mentor in print on your own trading journey. It's my honor to introduce Peter Robbins. Hello, Peter. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Anthony, for having me. It's I really like the name of the podcast. It's almost like we were meant to be together on this day. So anyway, and thanks for having me. It's
an absolute pleasure, Peter. And somebody sent over your book, and I said, I really like this guy already. I like the style in naming conventions. So here we are. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and I bought the book. I've been reading through The Trader's Journey, and I love it. I just want to say I wish I had found something like this when I first started trading, because you walk through in a very practical sense. I think obviously decades and decades of experience and know-how. It's very practical. And it honestly feels like speaking with someone and listening to them. Was that the intention?
Yeah, you're making me feel old, first of all. But anyway, the idea was, when I write, I just write about, like I'm having a conversation with someone, right? And the main purpose was to be like that, very conversational, and cover all of the bases that someone needs to learn before they should really start trading. So
yeah. Absolutely. And I want to talk about some of those bases. What are some of the most important either concepts or factors to consider for people who want to start trading at a very high level, a practical, professional, most importantly, level?
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at a high professional level. The idea is anyone that's trading is putting money at risk, and you shouldn't be... You need to approach it in a way that you really understand what you're doing and you understand the risks. And I know, for example, I did a poll recently on X, and I asked people to rate themselves from 1 to 4 how much they knew when they put on their first trade. And it was interesting because 90% of the people that responded were either had no idea or very little idea, right? So the idea that all these people are jumping into this business, I call it a business on purpose, is with little experience. It's like, imagine doing anything where you're putting yourself at risk. That could be a sport, it could be any other profession, without knowing anything, right? And unfortunately, in this day and age, it's very easy to trade, right? Anyone can open up an account with literally a couple of clicks of a button, fund it with a few dollars, and you can, put a trade on without any experience, any knowledge. So that was, again, part of why I wanted to write this book, right? To give people at least a little heads up and a little bit of structure so that when they made their first trade that they had at least some solid foundation instead of just going in blind and risking all their money, right? So,
Yeah.
but you asked the question, what are some of the key things? So, to me, the first thing is, why are you trading? All right. And should you be trading? Because I know in this day and age, there's so many people on social media that are just flogging easy money, easy system, follow this, and you'll make, millions of dollars overnight. And it's easy for people to get into it, and then they've gamified it, so it's very, very easy to get hooked on it. So a lot of people are just in it to make money and make money fast. And again, so wanted to set some realistic expectations. What does that actually mean, and what does that mean from a risk profile perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then the idea is, what's important is to have that foundation of knowledge, right? So really, do you know what a stock and bond is? Do you know what different trading styles there are? Do you know, what you're actually getting into? And then I cover some different strategies. I talk a lot about alignment and in general, right? It's like a lot of people, day trading as an example seems to be one of the most popular things that people want to get into, right? Because all they hear about is day trading. And a lot of people just, they have a full-time job. Like literally they can't day trade, right? But they try it on the side while they're at work, or so this thing of not being aligned with the strategy that you're doing is you're starting off on the wrong foot, right? So the idea of really evaluating yourself, looking at your personal situation, your own, psychological resilience, and then finding a style that fits that, right? As opposed to just jumping into whatever someone's telling you to do, right? I know this is the thing with a lot of trading books, right? What they do is they take someone who has been successful in trading and they've had a career in trading, and they document their trading style. And they, not all of them, but some of them come across as if you copy my style, you too can be successful, right? Which to me is definitely not true, right? This person may have been trading for 20 years and they've perfected this themselves, and just because they can tell you these are the rules that I follow doesn't mean that you can do it as well, right? So anyway, so part of that is getting alignment with a strategy that fits with you. And then the other big piece is the trader psychology itself, right? Being able to trade the style that you picked and make those decisions that are not reactionary, but actually conscious decisions around, what you're actually doing. So
If you're looking for ways to improve your trading, Investors Underground might be able to help. You'll have access to courses and mentors to learn from, some of the best technology available for scanning stocks and breaking news, and access to the chat rooms, where you'll find a vibrant community of focused traders who share their trade ideas in real time each day. Members have access to the morning broadcasts, where the moderators share their trade ideas for the day ahead during the pre-market session. Members also have access to the midday study sessions, where they can review trades, ask questions, and receive real-time feedback in a group setting. Nightly watch lists with stocks to keep an eye on for the upcoming trading sessions. Trade recaps where the moderators share their executions and outcomes of trades, and all the other tools and resources that Investors Underground has to offer. Listeners of the Trader's Journey can access exclusive membership deals available at investorsunderground.com/journey. And now, back to our episode with Peter Robbins. Right. And I mean, just to underscore what you said, it's easier than ever to be marketed the hype and the allure of trading without really discussing the risk involved in it and the difficulty to trading. It's really easy to see some of the exciting parts of trading without marketing all of the intense work that goes into doing this at a very successful elite level. And I think a little bit of that is kind of, to your point, just how hard it is to do this if you're, especially if you, as you mentioned, day trading takes a lot of work and a lot of risk and skill involved in doing that. And certain personality profiles, risk profiles, excel in that type of environment, where as someone who might be working full time and doesn't have that much time, say for market open for the first 2 hours, to be
Um,
glued to their screen and making executions in and out of trades. It's not necessarily the most compatible, but hopefully with reading books such as yours, people get a better sense of what it takes to succeed in different styles. Is that pretty accurate?
yeah, and one of the things, especially with social media these days, is that no one wants to talk about the hard truth. So people are trying to sell something, right? So you make it sexy, you make it, people are more liable to buy something or get involved in something where they're promised easy money, right? So, but you very seldom hear about the hard truths of trading, right?
Mhm.
And it was interesting because when I started sort of social media myself on X, and the idea was to present these hard truths. I thought, no one's going to listen to me or whatever, right? But it's actually, I think there's a group of people that want to trade for the money, and they're not passionate about trading. They don't even know what trading means. They're just there for the money, right? And then there is another group who are serious about trading. They have a passion, and they need the proper guidance to get started properly, right?
Mhm.
So I think there is this big group that really do want to hear the hard truths and really want to understand trading. And, you know, so that was sort of, again, what I wanted to get to in the book, right? Is really just say it, tell it as it is, and hopefully offer some sort of pathway or guidance to get there. So,
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot harder to sell someone on going on a journey
um,
than it is about would you like to make 500% of your money in the next 4 weeks.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, and, and if we could, Peter, I'd like to rewind and talk a little bit about your trading journey and how you first heard about the stock market and the idea of trading. So can you walk us through what that was like for you? What did you think trading was at the beginning?
Yeah. Well, I think if I was going to respond to my own poll, my response would also be no idea, right? So, um, I didn't have parents or any sort of family members that were traders. This was something that was strictly my interest. With a fellow, I was actually gonna. I started trading when I was 15, so I was in grade 10, right? And I had a friend of mine, and me and him are both interested in business, right? We were going to study business. It's again, some of these passions, some of these things start young, and we were both interested in trading. And I'm from Canada, so if you know Canada at all, the stock markets up here were full of penny stocks and resource based for the most part, especially back then. Again, remember I started trading in the 70s. Okay, so this was a time when there was multiple brokers. They were boutique brokers. There was no computers. There was very little books, right? So the idea of what you can get today versus what was back then, it was like very little information. So me and him opened up. We had to actually get our parents to open up an account for us because we were underage, and then started trading these penny stocks. And then again, like most traders, what you do is you learn the lessons the hard way, right? You learn it over time. And so you try something and then it either works or doesn't. If it doesn't, you learn something, right? And again, that's the idea is like learn as much before you put the money at risk. But that's how I got involved in trading is just me and a buddy wanted to make some money to pay for our university and yeah.
Do you remember some of your first trades, or some of even the tickers or kind of ideas that you had about taking trades? What were
Yeah.
some of the things back then that you thought were good trades to take, or investments or anything like that?
Yeah. So again, remember, no computers, no graphs, no charting, right? So, and no instant information, right? So what I used to get is a newsletter from the broker. It was called the fortnightly, right? So a fortnight is 2 weeks. So this newsletter came out every 2 weeks. So
Mhm.
you can imagine every 2 weeks. So again, by definition, no one day traded. No one, like everyone was longer term position. And the other thing was the commissions were very high. Nowadays, you trade for free. Back then, and obviously me and him didn't have a huge account. We had a small account, right? But we were probably paying $25 in and $25 out. So you had to have quite a significant return just to, like, you're basically, if you're profitable, you're basically trading to pay the commissions, right? A couple of, a name comes to mind. One was called Silver Leader Mines. So again, it was probably some little penny stock, some little mine. That one rings a bell. And then another trade that I remember from back then was we had a we must have had a field trip in high school where we went down to Toronto, and we went into one of the, I don't know if you remember Simpsons, Simpsons Sears. So there was a big Simpsons store down in Toronto, and as part of this trip, we went in, because this was a business trip, and we went into the boardroom of Simpsons. So this was me, again, interested in business and seeing a boardroom for the first time in this, all mahogany, and it was like a really beautiful boardroom, right? So when I got home, I decided, okay, I'm going to buy Simpson shares. Right? So again, you can imagine that, like, this is the motivation for putting on the trade, like, just totally ridiculous, right? But it just so happened, like, a week later, it got bought out by Hudson Bay, and they offered like twice what I paid for it. So again, that was, I was hooked, right?
Yeah.
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 But
A
these
little
were,
bit of on the ground research, field research to kind of figure it out. I mean, that must have felt great. I could only
yeah,
imagine.
it felt great, but again, it was totally clueless, right? It was just, the motivation was because I liked the boardroom. Like,
Yeah.
if I looked today and saw the chart, it might have been going down. I would have had a whole different perspective on it, right? But anyway, those are a couple of trades I remember from back then.
And was that more or less your type of trading style at that time, sort of based on what the environment provided and the amount of time it took to, get information about stocks from the broker and place a trade? Did you start more in a swing sort of investment style? How long did you hold on to that Simpson trade? And, what did your evolution of trading style eventually evolve into?
Yeah. So that Simpson trade only lasted for like a week because it was taken over by another company. So, but just by definition, because of the cost of trading, you had to be in it for the longer term. As far as information, like, as far as how I was making decisions, then I probably, and this was something very common for a lot of new traders as well, is just from newsletters, right? So nowadays, it's not newsletters, but it's people, posting on X, or people, so again, they're getting ideas from people, but not having any idea of why that's a good trade. Or someone might have some logic, but as well as I, if you take any stock, you can get someone saying it's a buy, and you can get someone else saying it's a sell, right? And both of them, for the most part, will have a very good logic for doing that. So again, it's not a good basis for making decisions. But that's how it started, right?
Mhm.
And then over time evolved as I went to university, and then when computers came out, and for the most part, I evolved to probably mostly a swing trader, or a trend trader. And the other thing too is trading or for most people, it's a part of their total investments, right? So when you talk about evolution or the journey of a trader, I look at it as it's also a journey of you as a financial manager of your own assets, right? So, I've got into real estate, I bought real estate, and then, I got into longer term portfolio where you're putting in mutual funds and holding for longer term. But the trading has always been sort of swing trading. But again, I've traded all different, evolved over different instruments as well, right? So there's a time after university where I don't know if you know who Bill Williams is. He wrote a book called Trading Chaos. So I was able to go down to Texas City and stayed with him for a few days and learn from him. So he was trading futures and commodities. So there was a time period when I wasn't, where I was trading full time, that methodology. But then I got a job. So this thing of, there's no one and done for a lot of people, right? Because you're trading in your life, right? And your life is constantly changing, right? So there might be some people, even if you're dedicated to being a day trader, there's going to be times when, you know, you're either sick or you're some family situation where you can't trade. So you got to evolve, right? And sometimes that might mean, changing your style or again, changing style because of your circumstance, but also because of, you may find you're no longer aligned with that style and you want to make a change, right? So,
Yeah. And there's always life events that occur, right? Like, as much as the trading style evolves and you adapt to the markets, we're all human at the end of the day. So our life evolves, get married, kids, house, whatever it might be. Maybe, as you mentioned, getting a job. Is that also something that recommend to people as well, to be conscious of what your life allows, how much, time at the screens and researching and things like that, and taking that into consideration to stay balanced with the markets?
yeah. So again, that comes down to, again, being aligned with your strategy, what style of trading, what instruments you trade. Like instruments, as an example, trading a S&P future is so much different than trading a utility stock, right? Mm-hmm. And depending on your risk profile and your ability to withstand volatility, you may not be able to trade one versus the other, right? But a lot of people get convinced to trade something based on lack of knowledge or that true evaluation, and they're struggling and they don't understand why, right? So yeah, I do recommend that people take a hard look at themselves. And, the simple one is like you just said, right? If you've got a full-time job, you can't be a day trader. So if you're interested in trading, you got to either do a swing trading or do a longer-term trading, or quit your job and become a day trader. But you can't do both, right? So yeah, it's staying, when you think about, there's a trading strategy and then there's your ability to actually trade that strategy. But before you develop your strategy, you need to make sure it's the right one for you, because you can have a strategy that, a lot of people are trading successfully, but you can't, right? And it's either because of, I don't know, you just find sometimes a strategy that just feels right? And then I've met traders where, again, they have some coach or someone they're working with that is teaching it. Well, I don't call it a coach. I guess it's more of a mentor, right? Where this is my methodology. I'm going to teach it to you, and I'll work with you to become successful, right? And and then you talk to them about the strategy, and it's like, that is not you, right? Like, it's no wonder you're not being successful, right? So,
yeah. And how important is it, do you think, for traders to, even if they learn a strategy from a mentor or they read about somebody who is very successful, to be able to adapt that strategy to their individual life, personality, risk profile? Would you recommend someone try to change their entire life to fit someone else's strategy, or would you recommend somebody, take what they can from someone and adapt it if it fits them, however it might fit them?
yeah, I look at this like an artist, right? So a lot of people that are artists, they start off by mastering the different masters' styles, right? So it's not their style. It's Rembrandt, or it's Da Vinci, or whatever. But then eventually they take a little bit here, a little bit there, and then they develop their own style, right? And then that's their style. So to me, it's the same thing with trading. It's like, you can't fit a round peg in a square hole, right? So if you got to then figure out how to make that round peg square, and part of that is adjusting your style, or Like you're not changing. Your life is your life, right? Now, you may, be able to make some changes, like maybe become more disciplined or whatever. But for the most part, you need to. Your life is your life. Evaluate it. Find the strategy that fits, right? But I know there's so many people that are struggling with someone else's methodology, and sometimes it might only take a few little tweaks. Like I said, I traded with Bill. I studied his method. What I learned from him was a way to look at the markets. I don't trade his style because it's too high risk for me, or the instruments were too high risk at the time. But what I learned from him was a lot, right? That I took into my own strategies, and so that's what you need to do, right? Like find something, find the information. That's why a lot of people, they read a lot of books and they take a lot of information in, and nowadays, like, there's just endless, like, you can spend, infinity time looking at all this stuff out there, right?
Right.
But finding those little pieces that you can then take into your strategy and adjust accordingly is something that you can do, right? But oftentimes there's a lot of good methodologies out there, right? Like, I'm just thinking of Can Slim as an example, or different things where there's a solid foundation with recognized edge, all right? And it may or may not fit you, but you don't have to make maybe really big changes to it in order to fit, right? So you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but you need to polish it up a little bit so that you're comfortable with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And today, Peter, where do you tend to find edge for you in trading? Do you tend to trade more of a swing style still? Is there any intraday that you trade? Is it mostly stocks, options, a mix? What does that all sort of look like for you?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, right? Like, a lot of people, when they're just starting out, they don't recognize this the complexity of trading, but also just the number of opportunities out there for an edge, right? And I'm always recommending find one thing first, master it, fit it to you. But again, you don't hear a lot about this, where it's like, if, say, the market, oftentimes it's, you have a nice trend for a while, and a certain style is going to work in that environment, right? Obviously, a trend following, you just buy, hold, have a trailing stop or whatever, and you're going to be making money, right? But then all of a sudden, it's in a consolidation phase, or just a volatile phase, and most traders, they give all their money back because they don't know how to adapt, either stand aside or have another style that fits that sort of environment, right? So for me, because of how long I've been trading, I've got a lot of tools, right, that the average person starting doesn't. So the key is, when you're starting, find a tool that works for you, or an edge, and then wait for that environment to trade it, and then do that, right? But be careful when things change and it's not necessarily fitting your style. And then, as you get more experience, or as part of the journey, is to add new styles or new things, because just like people diversify across different asset classes, say, for their portfolio, as a trader, you can diversify across different styles, because at certain times some styles are working and others aren't, right? So you can move around that way. So for me personally, I happen to now be retired, so I can trade what I want, when I want, and how I want, right? As opposed to before, when I was working, where I'd had to do swing trading, and I had only so much time because I was raising a family or whatever. So again, the time commitment. And now, I can go a month without trading at all. I can, I can, if, like, say, for right now, the market's been very in a trading range for like a long time, right? It was this volatile period. We had that nice run up all, last year, and then now it's been a bit of a mess. So it's perfect environment, say, for day trading, or, but not so much for, buying, longer term swing trades, right? So being able to recognize that and then adapt accordingly is sort of something that, as you gain more experience and more develop more tools for yourself, you can make those type of changes, right? So,
Yeah.
so my main focus is still trading stocks and mostly swing trading in my
Mhm.
trading account. But like I say, I've got it's looking outside of that to your other asset class, like the other long-term portfolios, or people have their pension or 401ks in the US, or their pension plans in Canada. You're gonna obviously gonna trade those differently than you would short term. So I differentiate between, like, there's people say, I guess, investments versus trading, but no matter what assets you have, you're trading them, right?
Mhm. You mentioned in the book, actually spend, I think, two chapters, if I'm not mistaken, on the importance of trading psychology. Can you talk a little bit about that role for traders and why it's important for traders, over the long term, to have an understanding of some of the psychology around trading?
All right. So one thing, first of all, there's as a new trader, you're gonna have these issues, right? You're gonna hold too long, or hold too long because you're in a losing position. You're gonna get out early because you want to have a win, or all these things that you're gonna encounter now. So, and part of the trader psychology is to figure out how to sort of counteract the natural reactions to make more conscious decisions. As far as how important it is, to me, it's sort of, you can't have one without the other, right? You need a strategy with a positive expectation, right? And oftentimes that's the easy part, because there is so many documented, whether it's just setups that work 60% of the time or whatever. It's not about being perfect. It's not about having a win every time, right? So, but most people spend all their time on that, or at least majority of their time on that, and they don't realize, like, a little tweak to your system isn't going to make the difference if you don't have the resilience, or the psychological strength to actually be able to push the buttons and trade according to what the rules say, right? That's like, you give 10 people the same strategy, the same rules, and you're going to get 10 different outcomes, right? And the outcomes aren't going to be necessarily because of the strategy, because they should theoretically be doing everything the same, but it's that the trader's ability to actually make those trades, and
Mhm.
that's where people fall down. So, and I would say, that's where, if most people continue to lose and continue to be frustrated with trading, it's really they're frustrated with themselves because they don't have that control. And there's a lot of good material out there on trader psychology, but it's like the hard truths of trading. No one wants to hear it, right? They want to hear that it's easy money. And if someone tells you, you really need to spend some time on yourself and understand, why you're having these behaviors, and then figure out ways to counter that so that you can, trade it according to plan. But again, it's hard, right? It's like a lot of people, and it's not just about trading. This is about life as well, right? Like, in life, there's a lot of things that we could learn, or whatever, have therapy, or whatever you need to deal with this emotional side of you and the psychological side of you, but most people just don't want to hear about, right? Because it's hard, right? It's
Mhm.
hard work. The developing a strategy is the easy part, right? So,
Right.
but so how important is it? It's critical, because if you can't trade your strategy, then you're just throwing money away.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. And for people who are having a hard time with the psychology part of it, who find themselves constantly, day in, day out, just obsessed over either fear in the market and losing money, or, you know, greed, I guess, is one that often gets tied to that, finding themselves, unwilling to take a decent sized profit because they think something is just going to continue to go up and up and up in their favor in terms of
mhm.
P&L and equity curve. There's a lot of other psychology and things like that, that issues tied to that. If a trader is facing those on a consistently, what recommendations would you give to them just in general, without picking any particular sort of psychological uh, issue or constraint that they might be feeling. But generally speaking, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, well, a lot of these things, like when we talk about the trader's journey, right? There's times when all of a sudden you have this aha moment where it's like, okay, like I'll give you an example for myself. It was when I learned to take a loss. All right. So everyone struggles with taking a loss. They need to be right. Like, and again, these are all psychological issues, right? Like you need to be right. You can't even think of taking a loss, right? So then people are holding all these dogs in their portfolio and their trading
Mhm.
account that they refuse to sell. But it once it hits you, right? Like if you look at trading is a mathematical game, right? It's like what's your percent of wins, what's your percent of losses, how much you average win, average loss, probability of these things. And if you look really understand the mathematics of it as an example, then you realize fairly quickly that yes, not taking early losses is gonna you're never gonna be successful, right? So
Mhm.
some people have to keep learning that lesson forever, but the idea of sometimes you'll just have this, okay, I get it. And then all of a sudden, and you can sort of start taking those losses with comfort, right?
Mhm.
But that's sort of the hard way to do it. The other thing is, again, it's this self-evaluation. And there are some great coaches out there that deal with this thing. There are some great books, but it's something you need to dedicate the time to, right? Because you need to be aware of what's going on. A lot of it is just this reaction, right? Because your instinct is towards these things, right? Like to avoid loss, like to avoid pain and embrace pleasure. So if you take a loss, that's painful, so you avoid it, right? If you have a small gain and even though your system's saying hold on for the profit target or whatever you want to do, people just want to take that gain to feel good about themselves, right? It's an ego thing, right? So there's no easy, like I said, that's becoming aware. I also really trading's a lonely business, right? For most people, for a lot of people, right? They enter it, they don't have a clue what they're doing. Even with nowadays, there's lots of discords and there's lots of groups around there, but a lot of them are also just individual traders doing their thing. But there is power in community in the trading. That there is a great trading community. So I really recommend for people to you know hang out with other traders and really share experiences and then share the lessons learned and then these aha moments. So you see someone else do it, and so that's just another way, right? Like spend time talking to other traders and really understand that this isn't something unique to you. It's not you're not a failure. It's just part of being a human, and that those type of things can be changed with the right work and time. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll underscore that as well. Getting to meet other traders, much better traders, especially, is helpful and can really put into perspective some of the issues that we might be having wherever we are in our trading journey. And likewise, even getting to speak with traders who are just starting or have less experience, less success. And it can also be helpful because they may ask a question that allows us to have an aha moment. Maybe we never consciously had a thought about something until we explain it to somebody else. So just wanted to underscore the importance of networking there. Peter, one of the questions I wanted to ask is about, whether trading is right for you, right? So people might be wondering to themselves, especially if they're, say, in a drawdown or they just had a big loss, is trading right for me? Am I going to be able to do this successfully? Or maybe they have success and they're thinking about quitting their full-time job. There's so many different times on, within someone's journey that they might be asking themselves, is this right for me? Trading full-time. Can you talk a little bit about, what your perspective is on that question? Is there a litmus test you could take, or are there certain, factors to consider? Where do you stand? How do you approach that?
all right. So I guess first, what is a successful trader, right? And what does success mean? And why are you trading? They say I always start with the why, right? Why are you in this? And so the question of, and trading isn't everything. There's a lot of people that are sort of, you know, addicted to trading. I'll say, right? Like it's their life. But they're not in it. They're in it maybe for the wrong reasons, right? So sometimes they have their aha moment, which is, oh my God, I'm just gambling my money away, and I'm not. And I'm not passionate enough about it to actually dedicate my life to learning it the right way. And oftentimes they're the ones that should be leaving, right? It's like you hear these stats that 90% of traders fail. It's not necessarily that they fail either, right? It could be, to your point, it's like they've tried it and they realize, my expectations were out of whack. I don't have enough capital to really make it worth my while, because there's a lot of people spending a lot of hours to make little money. And if they actually step back and evaluate, it's like, it's not worth my time, right? Mm-hmm. And they become obsessed with it or whatever. And it's like, okay, I need to walk away. It's like social media, right? It's like if you're spending 10 hours a day on your phone, maybe you got to evaluate and step back. As far as trading full time, again, it's a profession, it's a career, right? But I think there's a lot of, again, what would I say? There's some people that are successful traders because there's something in them that makes them a successful trader, right? I'll use sports as an example, right? There's hockey players, right? Or there's all these kids that want to be a hockey player in the NHL or in a professional manner, and they start skating when they're 3 years old, and their parents are pushing them through hockey. But they just don't have it, right? Like they're never going to be a professional hockey player. That's not to say they can't have fun skating and playing hockey with their buddies or whatever, right? But they're never going to be that, make a living out of it. And it's the same thing with trading, right? There's people that are great at it. They can, and even day traders, it might only trade for 2 hours a day, but they can make a living from it. But also, again, this is that thing around how much capital do you need to actually make a living? First of all, when you're trading, it's your money on the line, right at risk. And humans have, again, this, money is so critical to us and so important to us. So just as soon as you start putting it at risk, all sorts of psychological issues take place, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're working full time and you're swing trading on the side, and you're able to make some money, this thing about, okay, what's going to change if you become a day trader, and really look at how much money you need to make in order to survive, right? And I know I had someone, DM me the other day, and they're like, well, what's a reasonable return you should be able to make trading, right? And he's saying, like, I understand I could make like 500% a year, right? Mm-hmm. like totally unrealistic things. So if someone's in that position and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to quit my job because I can make this type of money, and then they not only realize they're running out of money because they're losing, because they're just making unrealistic risks, but then all of a sudden the mortgage is due, or the bills are paid, they need to feed themselves. So again, it's really looking at it realistically around, what it is. I would think there's a lot of day traders. If they are a day trader, they probably have lots of money. You know what I mean? Like, they're not trading lots of money, but they've got other assets and other money that's helping them to survive, right? Whether it's, a business on the side or other investments or whatever. Because again, I would just ask people to look at realistically how much you think you can make enough consistently in order to be able to survive the drawdowns or bad times. And if you're struggling and you're, you don't have funds to survive, that's a whole other psychological issue that's going to, just put you on a downward spiral, right? So I know they always say, oh, before you do that, you should have like a year's worth of expenses in the bank so that you can, rely on that as you develop your skills. And that's a serious, that's serious, right? People don't take it serious. Like, well, I don't need that much. I'm going to be making all this money. So,
Hmm.
but they don't anyway. So it's,
Hmm.
again, be prepared, realistic expectations, have some capital behind you that's doing, but also you need to be a professional and you need to approach it professionally. And you're not going to make it because somebody on social media told you can make this type of money. And so don't quit your day job and think you can do this full time until you've proven it to yourself. Maybe take a couple of weeks vacation from your job and try day trading for 2 weeks and see what happens, right? And it's like not as necessarily as easy as you think. So
Right. Yeah. And you brought up, being professional about it. And I want to touch on that as well. So, what can traders do? How should traders think about approaching trading in a professional way? What does it take to approach trading professionally? What kind of work goes into it? Do those steps look like? And how does a trader know when they're treating it truly in a professional kind of way?
yeah, well, like I say, if you're not treating it like a business, then it's a hobby probably. And if it's a hobby, you're probably losing money, right? So when you think about the seriousness of it, right? And it's just like any other small business that someone starts out, right? There's so many things you need to be good at. You need, like, a small business, you need to be good at marketing. You need someone to do accounting. You need someone to buy and sell your inventory. Like, there's all these components that if you manage them all well, you can have a successful business, right? And it's the same thing with trading, right? As a trader, unless you got to place your trades, you got to evaluate your trades, you got to, you know, do accounting and taxes and and all of that on top of the fact that you've got this, you know, mental struggle, right? So my approach is always, if you're going to be serious about this, like any profession, then you need to treat it that way. Like if you are going to become a lawyer, you don't just start practicing law, or a surgeon or whatever, right? You need to start from the bottom and learn the trade. So again, that's just building up a knowledge base, right? Like, so you understand, like, I know now, don't know about you, but if you're talking to people that don't trade and you just start talking a little bit about trading, like they have no clue what you're talking about, right? So you can imagine if someone like that wanted to start trading, there's so much information they need to take in, or so much knowledge just to understand the game, right? And then after the knowledge, then you need to get some experience, right? Which means practicing and looking at lots of charts and doing all these things to get comfortable with the profession and the environment. Is like, if you're a doctor, you need to, do a residence or whatever, right? And to have someone else helping you to learn it. And then eventually you develop a skill, right? So all of that, and running it like a business, like having an education plan, having the right tools, having the right approach, and being aligned, and dealing with your psychology. All this is like, when I talk about treating it as a business, I mean you treat all of the components. All the components are going to, if done properly, are going to ensure success, or not necessarily guarantee it, because not everyone's into it, but it'll give you the foundation that will give you the best odds of being successful, right? Anything less than that, in my mind, is all these people that are dropping out because they either, when they start to realize how serious it is and what's involved, they're not willing to commit to it because they don't really have a passion for trading, or they find out it's just not for them, which is fine, right? It's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point, that there's all of these components to it. And if you're missing in one particular piece of the whole picture, you have something to fix, just like you would do in any other profession. And safe to say that it's an ongoing education sort of profession, as well as the market changes, new instruments, slight deviations in a market cycle compared to the last maybe market cycle. There's all of this ongoing work. Is that also, fair to say?
Yeah, and that's why I call it a journey, and it's also why I call it a practice, right? It's like, It's like a yoga practice. You don't perfect yoga, right? You just
Mm.
you practice it, and as you change and as you get better at things, you try different things. And it's the same thing with trading, right? It's to your point. Think when I started trading in the 70s, how different it was then compared to now, right? So how I trade now is totally different, but and how with AI now and everything else coming out, who knows how people are going to be trading. So you need to, I think that's another fear with new traders too. They think, oh, I just have to learn this one thing, and and if you told them, well, that edge might disappear, say, it's like, oh my God, that's the only edge I have. So they need to realize there's all sorts of opportunities out there, and keep yourself open and recognize that if you spend the time and get the experience, you'll be able to evolve there. But initially, it's very scary, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're continuously evolving. It's a journey for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And Peter, if it's okay with you, I'd love to go through sort of a kind of miscellaneous and lightning round type of questions, a couple different topics, kind of quick questions, kind of quick answers. Is that okay?
Sure, no problem.
So I'll kick it off with just asking, what one or two resources were most helpful for you when you started learning about trading to give you sort of the knowledge that you have now? What set you on a good educational path?
Yeah, I think one was books. There are some great trading books out there. It's like I mentioned before about learning to be an artist. You study the masters, right? So it's the same thing. Like I know Jack Schwager's books around, the market wizards. That's great because everyone you read, you soon realize, oh my God, like there's all these approaches. Not only every approach, but there's all these sort of, rules that people say like, don't double down on a loser and don't do this and don't do that. And you also realize that people are breaking those rules and making a living at it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting to see like there's how people take and have developed their own style that's so different, right? So I think that's to me was a really good place for people to start because it's not just don't get caught up in this one mentor or someone trying to sell you a methodology. Like understand all the different styles and all the different approaches so that you can find what resonates with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, like the other tool would have been the computer, right? The computer and charting packages were so like in the 70s they were drawing charts by hand, right? So having that availability is amazing. So
What would you say is your biggest strength as a trader personally?
I would think adaptability, right? So being able to see what environment we're in, recognize that, match it up with your experience and skills, and then adapt accordingly, right? Because, again, sticking to something that's not working is you're just going to fail, right? So,
What advice would you give to traders who are struggling or having a hard time finding consistency in trading?
yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is different traders are going to be at different points on the journey, right, or on the path. So if you're struggling, it depends on where you're at, right, in that journey. So someone might be struggling right out of the gate just because they don't understand enough, right, or they don't know how to build a strategy, or they don't know that. Once you've got some experience, then again, this whole alignment thing and really evaluating whether it's the right for you, that would be another sort of recommendation. And then finally, there's so many. You ask any trader that's struggling, they'll say, "I'm not doing what I know I need to do,"
Mm.
and it's almost like self-sabotage, right? It's like, and again, this comes back to the psychological aspect, right? Where it's like, like you're. I'll give an example like FOMO, right? So someone's gets sucked into chasing something that's taking off, and it's like they know based on their experience that it's never worked, but they just can't help themselves, right? Because they want to be able to tell someone, oh, I was on Bitcoin when it was going up, right? Meanwhile, they'd buy it right at the top and it tanks. So really being honest with yourself, and then again, this comes down to the psychological thing of evaluating, tracking your trades, journaling why you're doing what you're doing, and then finding out where your real mistakes are and why they're happening, and then working on yourself to address those things, right? So,
Peter, you've spoken to lots of traders over the years. Are there any particular characteristics that they have sort of built into their personality, or just sort of habits of excellence that they all possess?
yeah, I wouldn't say things that they all possess, but I think for the most part, the common characteristics are: one, they have a passion for trading, right? There's something there that they really enjoy. Like, again, if you don't like, like I said, playing hockey, you're not going to become a good hockey player, right? So same thing with trading. I think a lot of people have a mathematical mindset, right? So they understand probabilities, they understand that side of things. So not that you have to be a mathematician, but you have to think probabilities. You have to think in mathematics. A lot of them are very structured. So they're disciplined. They have a process. Process is critical, right? So documenting your process, writing it down so that it really sinks in, and then gives you a better chance of actually following it would be another one. And then I guess mental resilience is another big one, right? So they've addressed those. They're willing to address those aspects of themselves and get over those so that they can trade accordingly. So,
And Peter, for those who read your book, which I highly recommend everybody does, what can they do to get the most out of your book? Is there anything particular that you recommend people approach it, or just in general? How can they maximize their return when they read your book?
yeah. Well, again, the book was not meant to be, this is how I trade and this is what you need to do to be successful at this style. It's more of a reference book for these are all the things you're going to encounter. These are all the different styles. So in order to get the most out of the book is, one, I would read it first, and then start at, depending on where you are on your path, go through and look at because I've sort of wrote the book in sort of a journey method as well, right? You got to start from A and you're working towards becoming a consistently profitable trader. So take the time to really understand what's there, spend the time with yourself to be honest with yourself of where you are against those sort of skill levels and experience, and then start working on it, right? So.
And last question, Peter, for anybody interested in learning more about you or how you trade, how can they learn more about you, or maybe even contact you?
So my big platform is X, right? So I've got a lot of followers there. I've met a lot of great traders, met a lot of great people. It's a really good community. And if you follow me, my DMs are open and I talk to anyone that reaches out and wants to chat. So I think, I wrote this book, initially, just like why I started X, was because I want to continuously remind myself of what it takes to be successful, right? Because every trader, no matter what, has slip-ups every once in a while, right? So it's like, if you're continuously, telling yourself this is the right thing to do, that's why I did that, right? And so, as far as X, that's where I started, but it became more of, once I started getting people and following and understanding what I'm writing. So I've, like I say, developed lots of good relationships and helping people out when if they want to reach out there.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and talk with me. I highly, highly recommend everybody go out and read your new book, The Trader's Journey, Navigating the Path to Trading Success, by Peter Robbins. Peter, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for having me on, and look forward to meeting you again soon sometime.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Trader's Journey. We have additional episodes we believe you might also like, so don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified of upcoming releases the moment they're available. Thanks for tuning in.